I am a woman of no distinction, of little importance. I am a woman of no reputation save that which is bad. You whisper as I pass by and cast judgmental glances, though you don't really take the time to look at me or even get to know me. For to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known, and otherwise what's the point in doing either one of them in the first place? I want to be known. I want someone to look at my face and not just see 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and 2 ears, but to see all that I am and could be, all my hopes, loves, and fears. But that's too much to hope for, to wish for, or pray for, so I don't, not anymore. Now I keep to myself, and by that I mean the pain that keeps me in my own private jail, the pain that's brought me here at midday to this well. To ask for a drink is no big request, but to ask it of me, a woman unclean, ashamed, used and abused, an outcast, a failure, a disappointment, a sinner. No drink passing from these hands to your lips could ever be refreshing, only condemning, as I'm sure you condemn me now, but you don't. You're a man of no distinction, though of the utmost importance, a man with little reputation, at least so far. You whisper and tell me to my face what all those glances have been about, and you take the time to really look at me, but don't need to get to know me, for to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And you know me. You actually know me, all of me and everything about me, every thought inside and hair on top of my head, every hurt stored up, every hope, every dread, my past and my future, all I am and could be. You tell me everything. You tell me about me. And that which is spoken by another would bring hate and condemnation. Coming from you brings love, grace, mercy, hope, and salvation. I've heard of one to come who would save a wretch like me, and here in my presence you say, I am he. To be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And I just met you, but I love you. I don't know you, but I want to get to. Let me run back to town. This is way too much for just me. There are others, brothers, sisters, lovers, haters, the good and the bad, sinners and saints, who should hear what you've told me, who should see what you've shown me, who should taste what you gave me, who should feel how you forgave me. For to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And they all need this too. We all do need it for our own.
This is one of those icons in the Bible, the woman at the well. How many of you have ever heard this story before? Yeah, many of you have. Maybe not all. Let me start with another one. West Coast, United States in the 60s, Southern California on the beach. Small church, very straight-laced, conservative, everything done decently and in order, gathered for worship in an evening. And after everything had begun, in the back door comes a bespectacled, long-haired, tie-dyed, besandaled, jean-shorted, paisley and peace sign hippie. Do you remember those? Some of you were those. Who walked up the middle of the aisle, right in the middle of everything, and sat on the floor cross-legged and looked up at the preacher. And everybody took a breath. Uh-oh. And sure enough, an elder from at the back got up and walked around the end of the pew slowly and quietly walked up the aisle, and everybody thought, here it comes, the expulsion. When he got beside him, he sat on the floor and crossed his legs. And they listened together. That one act of generosity on the part of somebody who didn't have to broke that church open and filled it full of a beach generation of young adults who had been told, just do your own thing, man, and had done their own thing and had got nowhere and wondered after that, is there any way to live? And something called the Jesus movement began that swept hundreds of thousands of them into faith in Jesus Christ. The message this morning is about a generous God. How many of you think those two words don't belong together? Whoever's God ain't generous. If it's generous, it ain't God. Keep listening. Because it says of Jesus that he started out in Jerusalem, but there he got so popular, his disciples baptizing, they were 12 to 1 to John the Baptist. And everybody said, he was winning over John the Baptist. It's like Jesus said, this is not a contest. He left town. But the normal way you leave town is to go way around a 2 days longer journey to get back to Galilee, so you can avoid going through an area called Samaria where those people live. But John starts off by saying to get there, to get to Galilee, he had to pass through Samaria. He jolly well did not have to pass through Samaria if he's following what everybody else does. If he's following what they do, he has to go through Decapolis. So he's not going through Samaria just to be quick. It was the quicker route. And he came into Sychar, a Samaritan village that bordered the field Jacob had given his son Joseph. This is way back at the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob days. Way back before even Israel is ever founded. In that land, there's a well dug that still exists in Jesus' day, and Jacob, the great ancestor, has given it to them, and it's an important site, and everybody goes to see it. Today, a cruise ship would pull up full of people who want to have a look, maybe drink the water. Jesus was worn out by the trip, and he sat down at the well at noon, as they judge it, which is the hot time of day. And a woman, John wants to be sure we don't make any mistake. A Samaritan woman. The Gospels are full of Samaritans and references to them, just so you don't make any mistake. A Samaritan came to draw water. If she came to draw water, if in fact it is at noon, she came to draw water at a time when most people don't, which could indicate that she comes at a time when there's less hassle. We're not sure. Jesus said, "Would you give me a drink of water?" Because his disciples had gone to the village to buy food for lunch. That sounds like a no-brainer. Could I have a drink of water? Until you recall that the Jews and the Samaritans, it'll say this a little bit later, don't have anything to do with one another, which is putting it mildly. If you drink from a Samaritan's cup, you are defiled and can't worship in the temple. You got to clean yourself up first. If you used the bathroom that a Samaritan used, you're defiled. And on and on. I don't want to go into this any deeper than that, but you get the picture. There's a whole lot of racism that's involved in this. And let's add another level to it. Jesus asks a woman for this, he being a rabbi, in a culture in which it was said, though I'm sure not everybody followed this, don't talk to a woman in public. Don't talk to your wife in public. Don't ask a woman for anything in public. And the wonder of this is not simply that he talked to her and he talked to a Samaritan, but that she talked back. Which makes me wonder if he knew she was going to be there. And sets the whole thing up to ask the question, what's he up to in the process? Because she's taken aback and asks, how come you, a Jew, are asking me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink? Because Jews wouldn't be caught dead talking to Samaritans. When somebody does that, you have to ask, what's going on here? When somebody creates an act, dare I use the word, of generosity that opens up a door nobody else ever really opens, to a person that never expects to have it opened, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? Reminds me of the movie Papillon. Do you remember that? It's one, Steve McQueen, way back in the day, in which he plays a convict who at one point reaches out and touches and actually cares for a leper. And as he backs away from touching the leper and giving him something, the leper says, "How did you know my disease was not communicable, not contagious?" And the convict says, "I didn't." And somebody flat out opens up their life and crosses all kinds of boundaries to give you something you don't expect. I mean, that just takes the sword right out of your hand. Where are we going with this? You're wide open to it. Jesus answered, if you knew, are you ready for this? If you knew the generosity of God and who I am, literally the gift of God and who it is that's talking to you, And I think what Jesus is saying, I am God's gift. The only time a man ever could rightly say, I'm God's gift to woman. This one. If you knew the generosity of God, you'd be asking me for a drink. And I would give you fresh, living water. There's a lot of men who said, I'm God's gift to women. That wasn't what they were trying to give or get. Do you know, maybe this is as far as you get in this sermon, you know the slightest thing about a generous God that come anywhere close to you? For some of you, the answer is yes. You know why? Because you become generous. If you don't, you become nervous. That's about the way it goes down. If you knew the generosity of God and who I am, you'd be asking me for a drink and I'd give it to you. Just like that. No ifs, ands, or buts. But the woman said, sir, you don't even have a bucket to draw with, and I don't expect you to use mine because I'm a Samaritan, and this well is deep, about 150 feet, so how are you going to get this living water, which is not a spiritualized thing, it's water that's flowing, not still like in a well, water that's flowing, doesn't come out of a well. Are you a better man than our ancestor Jacob? We deal with this text on this Sunday in Lent because we address the question as we're going to the cross. Who is it that goes to the cross? Who is this Jesus? You a better man than Jacob? You a better man than our ancestor? It's a question that's asked today around the world. Who is Jesus Christ? What's the value that you put on Jesus Christ? He dug this well and drank from it. He and his sons and livestock and passed it down to us. So what do you got? Sort of the implication. What is this living water? And Jesus said, everyone who drinks this water will get thirsty again and again. Anyone who drinks the water I give will never thirst. Not ever. The water I give will be an artesian spring within. Okay? Now we are speaking about a metaphor here. Gushing fountains of endless life. At another point, when Jesus says something like this, anyone who believes in me, out of his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. There is a cryptic statement that's added at the end. This he spoke of the Spirit. Jesus is saying to her, though she does not understand at this point, that there is a Spirit that is given, that is implanted within a life, that brings forth in the life which is not in the life by itself naturally. It is a union of God with a human person that comes through faith and trust and walking in obedience that continuously springs up, does not need an explanation, does not need somebody to qualify it, does not go away, and can be accessed at any time, in any place, anywhere, which is what makes the Christian faith, begging your pardon, this is not an invidious comparison, portable. You can be in a prison cell and in touch with Jesus Christ. You can be on the other side of the planet from the place you are born. You can be in the International Space Station and in touch with God through Jesus Christ, if in fact the Spirit of Christ is planted within your life. Christian faith is not about churches. It is not about catechisms. It is not about clergy. It is about walking in living contact with the God of heaven who has sent his gift, Christ, and that contact, that communion is in here. And I'll tell you how it manifests. You pray. You pray with utter confidence. You might not have the slightest idea what words to say. You pray anyway. You pray about everything. You start and you finish with prayer. You never give up because you are aware that that contact is meaningful. You are heard. You are understood. And you will be answered together with all of the church, all of those who in all times and all places have always been praying. I think there's some people here who know what I'm talking about, do you? Yeah. That's Jesus. And he said to her, you ask. Get this? I'll give. But I'm a Samaritan. Don't care. But I'm a woman. Don't care. But I'm this. But I'm that. But I'm that. By the time you get to the end, you're butts. Sorry. He doesn't care. The generous God remains the one who still wants to implant in your life His living Spirit. You can be in a senior's home or a hospital bed. You are in touch with the living God through faith in Jesus Christ by the gift of His Holy Spirit. That's what Easter's all about. You can pack up from here, go to the airport, get on a plane and go to Siberia and be in as much touch with Christ as I'll ever be. Because of the well of living water that never runs dry. Never runs dry. And it creates a kind of fellowship that transcends human understanding. A while ago, a man went to China in the days when it was against the law to be a Christian. It still is in many provinces. And so he wondered, how do I go to church? He walked out in the streets in Beijing, just walking along the streets, and he heard people singing Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. You know that hymn? They were singing in Chinese, didn't understand a word they said, but he just got in behind them and followed them. They went to a house. 110 people walked into the house, sat down, worshiped God, got up immediately, walked out. Another 110 came in, he watched them. 1,000 people worshipped in the house. On that Sunday, he never said a word about anything. He said, I never understood a word about anything. I have never been in a purer sense of the presence of God than I was there. That well speaks every language and none. And what he said was, this is what I want you to get. I just want to give it to you. All that other stuff doesn't mean anything to me. God just wants to give it to you. And the woman said, give it to me. And I'll never go back to this well again. And Jesus said, go call your husband. Now, if I were you and I'm me, we both should be saying, what's my husband got to do with this? And she said, I have no husband. And he said, that's nicely put. I have no husband. You've had 5 husbands. And the man you're living with now isn't even your husband. You spoke the truth. Push pause just for a minute. Everything pretty much I've read about analysis of this woman says, this woman must have a pretty loose moral life. So that must mean that this is now about forgiveness. Is Jesus going to forgive her? I would just like to say the following so we can get past this. Number 1, she had 5 husbands. That's what I call marriage. Okay. Number 2, in her culture, this woman would have had 0 control over who married her and when she was married. None whatsoever. Number 3, she had 0 control over whether she was divorced. Number 4, it could well be that she was part of a levirate marriage, which means you get passed from brother-in-law to brother-in-law within the same family, and at the end one of them said, I don't want her, so that she has a man, even the message says, the man you're living with now, it simply, literally says, the man you have now doesn't want you. You're at the end of your rope. And quite likely what this woman is coming at noon today for is that she is without children, which is a tragedy, but considered to be the curse of God. So nobody wants to be with anybody who's cursed. I'm guessing here, but there's nothing in this that says, A, she was immoral, or B, Jesus forgave her for it. What it does say is just what happens after this, in which she says, I see that you're a prophet. Now, how you came to know that, I'll leave that to him. But that's the point. We've gone now from good man. Are you a better man than our forefather? To you're a prophet, aren't you? And part of this journey for this woman is not coming simply to understand that Jesus is a great guy who gives me a gift. to understand who this great man is. You're a prophet. Well, tell me this. Our ancestors worshiped God at this mountain, but you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place for worship. Right? Now, here's another thing we need to understand. It was said that if you taught a woman anything about God or the Bible, you taught her, I hate this, but you taught her loose morals. So in other words, the fact that she has any theological understanding and wants to ask questions about it puts her in the category of women should keep their mouths shut. Ever heard that one? So if Jesus is a rabbi at this point and he's going to follow his culture, he should say, I don't talk to women. And she should have known enough not to ask the question. It seems to me at this point she thought this is a different kind of man. This is a different kind of man. I think the world could use a few more different kind of men who answers a woman's questions. One of the things I tried to be sure to do when I was at Ambrose on a theology faculty was to make sure that women who came to study there had full access to the study of theology, because I knew that even in my own century, many of those women had been denied access to that very thing. Wrongly. Still, Jesus answered her. He talked with her. She asked him a question, and she was smart enough to know a good one. And he answered her. Generous God, generous Jesus. Where do we find these people? Believe me, woman, the time is coming when you Samaritans will worship the Father, neither here at this mountain, got to understand, Mount Gerizim in Samaria was what Samaritans had created as their temple mount, because they had no access to any other one. Then there was Jerusalem. That's what the Jews had. Your religion, my religion, your house of worship, my house of worship. Back and forth we go. The time is coming. We Jews worship in the clear light of day. God's way of salvation is made available through the Jews. But the time is coming. It has in fact come. It's here now, when what you're called will not matter, and where you go to worship will not matter. Now, that would be news on the Herald today. We have a fight over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The Muslims say, mine. The Christians say, ours. The Jews say, ours from way back. Let's shed blood over that one. Jesus said, the time is coming and is now here when it doesn't matter anymore. When the dwelling place of worship is in here. I wish they'd take the Temple Mount and print over it what was said of it in Jesus' day. This house shall be called a house of prayer for. What is the word? What's the next words? All nations. Maybe someday we'll get it. I'll vote for that. But right now I know this. And I know it. I can sit with my grandchildren on a campfire and we can worship, because the dwelling place of God being within creates a space for worship in the human life of infinite value. Jesus Christ says, that's what I care about. And that space exists within you. It's you. It's who you are and the way you live that count before God. Your worship must engage your spirit in the pursuit of truth. And the last thing he says, those who worship him must do it out of their very being, because that's what God is. You know, when somebody says, wow, like this was the first church I ever went to where somebody actually said, wow. You know? And I heard it. I thought, that's curious. And after a while, I thought, you know, sometimes they really mean it. Good grief. Then it got to where I was saying, wow. Because wow is that expression of worship. And it's the kind of thing you can get. Like I could say wow, you know, that's all those other words. I can say wow. There are times when I'm gobsmacked. Do you know that? I was when I looked at this. Wow. I don't know what to say. Jesus said, go there. That's worship. Stay there. That's where God exists. He takes a look at a human person and says, wow. He takes a look at a murderer and says, wow. A rapist and says, wow. A thief, a liar, like the dear man in the video. I'm an addict. I'm a thief. I'm a liar. Thought it probably could have gone on, but there wasn't enough time. Me too. Wow. Jesus said, find that place. I'll create that space by the gift of my Spirit in you. Then learn to say, wow. That's called worship. That's what it's about. No shedding of blood over these walls versus those walls. Take it to the world. Take it to the streets. Wow. The woman said, I don't know about that. I love her for saying that. I don't know about that. I only know what I know right now. I know that the Messiah is coming, and when he arrives, we'll get the whole story. They expected one too. The Holy One from God who'd set things right. And Jesus said, and this is the first time he says it, the first time he uses the I am words, and he uses them to a Samaritan, and he uses them to a woman. I'm him. You don't have to wait any longer or look any further. I'm standing in front of you. Jesus Christ says today to the whole world, I'm standing in front of you. You don't have to go up into heaven to find me. You don't have to go down to the earth. The word of faith is right here. I believe. Some of you sitting here, is this the day you say those words? I believe. Send the Spirit into my life. I want to say wow for the rest of my natural life. That's what it's about. Just then his disciples came back. They were shocked. They couldn't believe he was talking with that kind of woman. And they wouldn't say it, but their faces showed it. The woman took the hit and left. Like that. Not everybody's got this right off the top. And by the way, being near Jesus didn't mean they got it. But she did. She went and told everybody, you don't think this is a Messiah, do you? I can't finish the rest of this story. I just want to tell you about some acts of generosity that sort of set the stage for me. My dad grew up in a home with an alcoholic father. And when stuff happens in your life and family that just isn't right, you start thinking, God must just absolutely not want me anywhere near him. And besides, if I get there, I will be filled with all kinds of feelings about stuff. I don't want any of that, so I just need to stay away. And there was a Sunday school teacher in the United Church that kept inviting him to go to a Christian businessman's meeting with him. My dad came from a fighter's family, and he thought, as soon as I go there, somebody's going to say, I know about your family. He said, and then I know what I'll do. I'm going to bust him one in the mouth, and that'll be the end of Jesus. I don't want any of that to happen, so I'll say, yes, I'm going to go, and then 20 minutes before it, I'll say, no, I can't make it, and I'll keep doing that, and he'll leave me alone. And that'll prove to me, I'm sort of interpreting here, that God really doesn't want anything to do with me. And that dear man, who was a banker, and about as socially distant from my dad as East is from West, but who knew Jesus and could see him and say, wow. Just kept asking. Kept getting turned down until one night Dad said, okay, I'm going to go get it over with. I'm going to bloody somebody's nose and that'll be it. Walked in and I could still hear Dad say, all he got was the right hand of fellowship. Hi, Russ, how are you? Nice to meet you. Come on in. They took the sword right out of his hand. On the way home in the car, he said, gee whiz, I sure wish I could be a Christian. And Jack Hornick pulled the car over to the side of the road. There are 3 generations of Christians, and among them a whole hatful of clergy that are there because Jack Horning had the generosity of Christ, who was the generosity of God and could give it to one man. It wasn't the only one, but to one man who founded a marriage and a life that turned the family that way towards Jesus Christ and has done so for 3 generations. God said, wow. That's what I'm talking about.